period. Période des questions. Senator Housakos.
My question is for the government leader, Senator Gold. 3 days before the last general election, while Prime Minister Carney was in Alberta, he made a commitment of building pipelines across Canada to make sure that we get Canada off the reliance of foreign oil. On May 13, during question period on CTV News, he was asked a very specific question if he's in favor of building pipelines, and he answered yes. Of course, we all recognize the challenge right now to our sovereignty, the challenge to our economy. So it's important we get acting on this. But of course, in the speech from the throne, there was hardly any mention about energy, oil, and gas. And of course, last week, more concerning, we had Minister Guilbeault, the political minister for Quebec, who said there's no need for pipelines. So the question is, did Minister Guilbeault just not receive the memo from the Prime Minister, or the Prime Minister's commitment to building pipelines and unleashing our economic potential just isn't as enthusiastic as he has led on during the election?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question. This government has been very clear, the Prime Minister has been very clear, both in the throne speech and outside of that, that one of the strategic goals for this country and one of the great opportunities for Canada to become an energy superpower, both in conventional and in clean energy. And in that regard, pipelines, along with energy corridors and other major projects of national importance and impact are very much on the table, very much being developed and considered by and brought forward by provinces, territories, and other stakeholders. And this government remains committed, where appropriate, and when there is the appropriate support from the provinces, Indigenous leaders, to move ahead rapidly for those projects that we in Canada need to provide us with greater economic security and prosperity for the future.
Senator Housakos.
Well, Senator Gold, I always like to take you at face value, but the truth of the matter is, when we look at the speech from the throne, there was very little that was said about energy, oil, and gas. And again, it's concerning when a political minister from Quebec, his top minister in Quebec, says that there's no need for no more pipelines. So again, the question is, we need more details of how committed this government is, and when are they going to get this done? Is Minister Guilbeault speaking on behalf of the government of Canada, or is it the Prime Minister who ultimately will trump the position that is taken by Minister Guilbeault?
Senator Gold.
Well, Senator Housakos, I guess plus ça change, plus ça reste la même.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Our interactions here in question period. The Prime Minister has been clear, so has the Minister responsible for energy, who is out west. There's a meeting to be held this weekend and beyond in Saskatoon, and when the parties come to an agreement on the projects, which may include pipelines and will no doubt include other matters, one hopes, this government will be judged by its actions.
Senator Carignan.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Gold, I'll try to use the time we have left. The Constitution says we still have a month left. Last week, in the RCMP's Ministerial Information Binder, it reported that over a 12-month period in 2024, the RCMP foiled 6 terrorist plots in Edmonton, Ottawa, and Toronto. Between April 2023 and March 2024, 83 terrorism-related charges were laid against 25 people, an increase of 488% over the previous year. Among them, which represents a worrisome trend of radicalization among young teenagers. The report points out that the resources available haven't kept pace with the needs or the charges that are increasing rapidly. So, Senator, how did it come to this? How does the government explain that while the threat is increasing dramatically, the RCMP's resources and operational capabilities are not keeping pace? Senator Gold, thank you for the question, dear colleague, and I want to highlight the importance of this serious problem here in Canada. During the election and afterwards, the government was very clear that it's going to emphasize Canadian security, not only at the border, but also in our communities. The measures announced and which will be implemented in the coming weeks and months also include increased personnel for the RCMP, as well as more use and cooperation between various police forces in Canada.
Senator Carignan.
Inquiétant.
Thank you, Senator. Even more worrisome, on May 12th, a Toronto-based Islamic State financier admitted using crowdfunding campaigns under the guise of supporting humanitarian aid in Gaza to send more than $35,000 to Islamic State fighters, including through emergency aid linked to COVID-19. How does the Liberal government explain that it's still so easy to send money to terrorist groups from Canada? And what is your plan to put a stop to this immediately? Senator Gold, the Canadian government has full trust in our security agencies who are amassing information and work closely with police services and police forces. The funding of terrorist activities, unfortunately, is a problem not only here in Canada, but on a global scale. Our government will continue to make great efforts to ensure that we put an end to this way of supporting nefarious acts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Gold, this month, the ongoing culture of harassment and abuse by those with authority in prisons caused a prison guard at Joyceville to take his life. If this is what staff experience, we can only imagine what prisoners experience. Freedom of information requests have also revealed billing fraud by government contractors that cost the communications and security establishment and ultimately Canadians over $325,000. The speech from the throne referenced the government's intention to get tougher on those who have committed multiple crimes. These bail and other proposed measures too often lead not to meaningful accountability, but to scooping up of poor, racialized, particularly Indigenous and Black and mentally ill folks. Will the government lead by example and investigate and hold to account such repeated and unaddressed situations of assaults, harassment, and fraud involving the government and those with whom they do business?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question and for your continued work on this subject and for raising this very deeply troubling and distressing case. This government is committed to addressing issues of fraud, waste, and harassment in the workplace and elsewhere. In that regard, I have every confidence that the government will take the appropriate steps to address these issues.
Senator Pate.
Thank you, Senator Gold. What concrete steps is the government taking to ensure proposed criminal law measures are effective and evidence-based, and will the government commit to sharing its findings with the public?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you. This government has announced a series of measures to improve the criminal law in certain areas, addressing the terrible issue of home invasions and the impact that has on families, a renewed focus on car theft, and also measures in the criminal code to make bail harder to get for repeat offenders charged with committing those crimes, along with crimes of human trafficking and drug smuggling. I have every confidence that this government will continue to base its decisions in these matters upon evidence-based, based upon evidence, I should say, including the use of disaggregated data.
Senatrice Yuans.
Senator Yuans. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the government representative in the chamber. Development and poverty reduction help to maintain stability and security in the world. During the French language debate on Radio-Canada on April 16th, the party leaders were asked the question, should international aid be cut? To flesh out the question, a comparative table of international aid spending compared Ukraine with its $2.1 billion. Ethiopia 195.3 and Haiti with 172.3 million. Last week, I was in Dayton for the meeting of NATO countries where discussions of increases in military spending overshadowed issues of humanitarian aid and development. At a time when Canada is being asked to increase its military spending, shouldn't we be aiming for parity between military spending and our official development assistance? Thank you. Senator Gold, thank you for the question. Canada has committed to playing its role abroad and will continue to do so, whether that be through military spending or international aid. We must strike a fair balance, the right balance between these two important issues. As His Majesty said in the speech from the throne, Canada continues to be an example in its behavior and its values as a force for good. Senator Yuans. Thank you, Senator Gold. I'd also like to quote the speech from the throne. To quote, Canada is ready to build a coalition of nations that share our values and believe in international cooperation. On the eve of a major G7 meeting, what financial target will Canada set for international cooperation and public development assistance? Senator Gold, thank you for the question. As the Senator rightly pointed out, it is important to provide aid and development, and soon we will have further to say on this issue. Senator Bury.
My question is for the representative of the government in the Senate, Senator Gold. Building a stronger, more secure and productive Canada depends on ensuring the well-being of all Canadians, physically, mentally and economically. The speech from the throne outlines the government's ambition to build the strongest economy in the G7. Recent analysis from the Boston Consulting Group places the economic impact of mental health issues at over $220 billion each year. Despite this, Canada only allocates 6.3% of the total health expenditures, far behind G7 countries or comparators such as France at 15% and Germany at 11%. Given this disparity and the link between poverty, mental health, and mental well-being, how does the government plan to address this underinvestment in mental health, substance use, and addiction, and align Canada's investment with that of other G7 countries?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question and for underlining a very important link between health generally, mental health in particular, and the well-being stability of our society and our economy. This government invests very heavily in health, as you know, notwithstanding that it is an exclusively provincial jurisdiction. And in that regard, the investments in mental health that are made, to which you refer, also must be viewed in light of those funds that provinces dedicate through their own resources, as well as the specific bilateral arrangements that government and the federal government, the provinces enter into as well. The Minister of Health and Finance Minister at the federal level are in regular discussions with their counterparts in the provinces and territories, and I have every confidence that the Minister of Health will be bringing forward additional ideas and receiving them from the provinces whose responsibility it is to their citizens in the matters of health and mental health.
Senator Bury.
Thank you, Senator Gold. Thank you for that response. Having noted yesterday as well that we still do not have a dedicated minister to mental health and addictions, understanding that mental health parity means valuing mental health on par with physical health, will the government show leadership and adopt a lifespan, whole of government and whole of society approach to achieving mental health parity, just as we do with gender parity and GBA plus analysis and perspectives?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for the question, colleague. I'm not aware of any plans of the government per se to implement that approach, but as all ministers have been tasked with identifying within their within their responsibilities, the actions that need to be taken to address the overarching priorities of this government and how their ministries can contribute to that. I think this is an important question. I will certainly bring it to the minister's attention at my first opportunity.
Sénatrice Gerba. Merci, Madame la
Senator Gerba. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Gold. During the reading of the speech from the throne, the King highlighted the historic challenges facing our country, comparable to the post-war period. And the King believed this to be a unique opportunity to profoundly transform our economy with safe partners. Africa, with its 1.4 billion potential consumers, will account, however, for only 0.76% of Canadian exports in 2023. Does the government intend to consider Africa as a strategic partner for diversifying our economy?
Gold.
Senator Gold, thank you for the question. As the Prime Minister has said several times, Canada is ready to build a coalition with countries that share its values and believe in international cooperation and free and open trade of goods, services, ideas. And of course, that includes African markets and countries, which are an opportunity for Canada to pursue. The government will certainly turn to all partners and allies. And I thank you once again for your advocacy in that respect. I will continue to speak with ministers about this subject. Senator Gerba. Thank you, Senator Gold. The previous government launched Canada's very first strategy for Africa in March. Does this new government intend to pursue its implementation and fully integrate it into its priorities? Senator Gold. Thank you for the question. The Prime Minister has charged ministers to identify the way in which each minister can contribute to the priorities defined by the Prime Minister. I believe that work is ongoing, and I shall draw this issue to the Prime Minister's attention as soon as I have an opportunity to do so.
Leader, on April the 15th, a young tourist was violently and randomly attacked while walking along the seawall in Cole Harbour, Vancouver. Her alleged attacker had already been released on bail on April the 14th after assaulting a peace officer in Surrey. He was then arrested again for a second assault and once again released on bail on April the 23rd. He is currently under house arrest in the heart of Vancouver. This is not an isolated case. Since the adoption of Bills C-75 and C-5, violent crime has surged by 50%, and in 2022, 256 people were killed by individuals who were out on bail or under some other form of release. These are direct consequences of the Liberal government's bail policies. So my question is, will the government apologize to this young woman and to all other victims for allowing such dangerous offenders to be released immediately after committing violent crimes?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question, and what a tragedy you've described, and our hearts go out to families and friends of all victims of crime under all circumstances. This government has made it clear that it will be introducing changes to the criminal code in a very targeted, evidence-based manner. It takes seriously the need to protect Canadians, and will continue. This new government will continue to work in that direction, taking advice and input from citizens and from law enforcement as well.
Senator Martin.
Why does the government refuse to acknowledge its responsibility, despite having ignored the letter from the provincial premiers in January of 2023, calling for a tougher bail system? Instead, the government tabled a mere 6-page bill that was grossly insufficient. Can the government admit that its soft on crime policy has failed? And more importantly, how many more victims will it take before the government repeals its permissive legislation and finally undertakes the real reform of the bail system?
Senator Gold.
It is the position of this government that the measures that they have announced and that we'll be introducing are the appropriate measures to address the issues that you raise, and the government will continue to work to make and help make Canadians safe and feel safer.
Senator Batters.
Senator Gold, Prime Minister Carney recently appointed 10 so-called secretaries of state in addition to 28 full cabinet ministers. The PMO website plainly states that these secretaries of state are, quote, not members of cabinet. So what are these secretaries of state? Do they have their own departments and departmental budgets? What is their salary? What is their office budget? Do they get a car and driver? If your response is that Secretary of State is the same as a Minister of State, why is your Carney Liberal government using the much more American-sounding title Secretary of State? That's not very elbows up of you.
Senator Gold.
Thank you for your question. This particular government has put in place talented Canadians from across the country, representing our great diversity, not only regionally, but in terms of talent and competency. The Prime Minister has chosen to name a cabinet that will focus on the 7 priorities that has been identified. These are the priorities and address issues that Canadians demand, and for which this government is committed, on which this government is committed to deliver.
Senator Batters.
Not even close to an answer. Senator Gold, under this Carney government, Saskatchewan is the only province in Canada without a full cabinet minister. We have one lone Secretary of State, Buckley Boulanger, and he does not sit at the cabinet table. His portfolio, rural development, used to be a full ministry. It's now been downgraded to a Secretary of State. The previous rural development minister, Goody Hutchings, said that if Canadians wanted anything from the Liberal government, they'd have to elect more Liberals. Is that why this Liberal government is leaving Saskatchewan out in the cold?
Senator Gold.
No, the answer, let me simply say that the government is very pleased with the election of the member from Saskatchewan and looking forward to the contribution that he can make on behalf of the citizens and residents of Saskatchewan to the work of the government, whether ministers or others, and that includes us. We all have a role to play, and this government is confident that he and others will play the role in the best interests of Canadians in the province and regions they represent.
Senatrice Meji.
Senator Meji. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll take advantage of my question to greet all of the new colleagues who've joined us and welcome them. Senator Gold, given that we'll soon both be retiring and there's already a vacant seat for Manitoba and there has been for over a month, do you know whether the new Prime Minister intends to keep the appointment process open to fill those senatorial positions? Senator Gold, thank you for the question and for pointing out that my retirement is imminent. I had forgotten. Seriously, thank you for the question. The independent appointment process remains in place, and the government representative's office will continue to promote the modernization of the Senate. Senator Meji. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Gold, can we hope that these appointments will be made at the same vigorous rate as the last few appointments were? Senator Gold. As you know, dear colleague, I don't want to mention your own retirement, We were sworn in on the same day, by the way. As you all know, there is an independent appointments process, which receives and analyzes the applications by those Canadians who've applied to become a member of this chamber. I have a great deal of faith in that process, which is reflected here clearly in the expertise, talent, and devotion of all of our colleagues.
For the government representative. In 2000, the Parliament of Canada passed an act to give effect to the requirement for clarity as set out in the opinion of the Supreme Court of Canada in the Quebec succession reference, otherwise known as the Clarity Act. The first sentence of the preamble also specifically names Quebec. In light of increasingly strident separatist rhetoric in Alberta and also in Saskatchewan, would you clarify with clarity whether the government believes that the Clarity Act applies to provinces other than Quebec?
Senator Gold.
Thank you for your question. It is not really a matter of belief, honorable colleague, it's a matter of law. The Clarity Act applies to all provinces.
Senator Simons.
Can you state then for the record what hurdles a province would have to clear before it could separate?
Senator Gold.
Well, Senator, thank you for the question. Were I in a classroom, perhaps in a law school or otherwise, that would be a question I would welcome. But in the brief time, let us simply say that this government is working hard to keep this country strong and united and will continue to do so.
Senator Prosper.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Leader of the Government in the Senate. Senator Gold, the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia have been working on a Section 35 self-government agreement on income assistance, including the implementation of the new ISC disability income support payments. While I recognize that this is technically a new government with a new leader, the commitment made by the Prime Minister to reconciliation has been made on the campaign trail, in his mandate letter, and from the speech from the throne. My question is this: can you confirm that the government will commit to flow the disability income support funding held by ISC so that Don Edley DeBeadam can ensure disabled income assistance clients living on reserve receive this benefit, which is 2 months overdue?
Senator Gold.
Thank you for your question. As you mentioned, the previous government committed $927.3 million in investments for the on-reserve income assistance program over 5 years starting in 2024-25 and $169 million ongoing to provide income support on reserve and to expand programming to meet demand. And this will address the urgent and essential needs of income assistance clients who are living in poverty on reserve and continue case management and pre-employment supports. With regard to the new disability supports on reserve in Nova Scotia, I have been informed that Indigenous Services Canada is currently working to flow the funding to communities in the manner that they prefer, whether through TEA, the Organization for Mi'kmaq Control and Management of Income Assistance, or directly to the nations.
Senator Prosper.
Thank you. Senator Gold, His Majesty stated, and I quote, "It is my great hope that in each of your communities and collectively as a country, a path is found towards truth and reconciliation in both word and deed. Will your government uphold the honor of the Crown by meeting its commitments and restarting good faith negotiations with Don Edley DeBeadam, TEA, by sharing information to complete the sectorial self-government agreement and fiscal agreement on Mi'kmaq income assistance?"
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question. It's an important one, and I will certainly raise this with the Minister at my earliest opportunity.
Senator McFedrin.
Much, Your Honor. Wildfires engulf northern Manitoba, having burned almost 500,000 acres of forest, forcing the evacuation of more than 17,000 people. The Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre reports More than 150 wildfires rage across Canada, over 83 classified as out of control. 2023, Canada experienced its worst wildfire season with more than 42 million acres burned, more than double the previous record, and with record-breaking air pollution. My question, with the government's throne speech commitment to develop industry and increase militarization in Canada, are climate crisis mitigation strategies included?
Senator Gold.
Well, thank you for your question, and thank you for underlining the ravages that are taking place across this country and the impact on communities, many of whom are in your province have to be evacuated under very, very difficult circumstances, especially in the north. Permit me to not necessarily subscribe to some of the characterizations in the question, but the important part of the question is that this government remains committed to address the issues of climate change in an effective manner. The Prime Minister has a distinguished career in analyzing the certain aspects of the matter. The Minister of Environment in place is committed to doing and making her ministry an effective one, and I have every confidence this government, in the pursuit of all of its objectives, will always take the well-being of our country, our nature, and our planet, and our future generations into account.
Senator McFedrin.
Thank you, Your Honour. It is good to read the Prime Minister's assurance to Manitoba's Premier Wab Kinew of full support. Wildfire devastation is Canada's new normal. What is your government doing beyond case-by-case support to plan this for now and our future?
Senator Gold.
I'm not in a possession of a grand plan to address such a vast and important series of initiatives that not only the federal government, but provincial, territorial governments and local communities will have to take. When the need arises, as the need in crisis arises, the federal government will be there, as it is for Manitoba, which has asked for federal assistance in its airlift evacuation support, and the government has responded. In longer term, the government will work with its partners and in provinces, territories, Indigenous communities, and other stakeholders to address the critical issues of the day, and will continue to do so on behalf of all of Canadians.
Le temps alloué pour la période des questions est maintenant écoulé. Delayed answers, réponses différées. Order.